Joined now by Sourabh Gupta. He's a senior Asia-Pacific International Relations Policy Specialist at the Institute for China-American Studies. Basically he wants to restructure this financial relationship with China. That was clear in his soundbite there. He put the brakes on this $27 billion East Coast rail line project. So I imagine China had some trepidation before this meeting. A pretty outspoken guy, 93 years old. How do you think the visit went?
Oh, I thought the visit went well. This was the first visit by Mahathir to beyond ASEAN. The first country that he has visited beyond ASEAN is China. He had issues with these investment projects. Some of those issues related, frankly, because he believed that there may have been fronts linked to that large fund which has been caught up in the corruption scandal, as well as there might be fiscal issues, debt-related issues. He had issues with that. He went straight to China. He talked it out right there. And obviously, he's just trying to rejigger the relationship in certain respects while fundamentally progressing along a very stable path where China-Malaysia relations are. So I think this is good communication. He's been prompt about it, and I think it's for the better.
So the main takeaways, basically, both sides got to air their thoughts on this whole thing and come away with a renewed relationship.
Come away with a renewed relationship, and I'd add to that, before he landed up in Beijing, he was in Hangzhou, and he went to Alibaba, and he went to Geely, and he talked about science, innovation, automotive, e-commerce, areas where he wants Beijing to make investments in Malaysia. He's very much engaged. From his days in the 1980s when he had invited Microsoft and those companies, he has always been on the science and technology side. He knows Asia to become modern, Southeast Asia to become modern, it needs to embrace science and technology wholeheartedly. He has been that sort of a man, while he's also been a little bit of a nationalist, coming from that age when Malaysia had been colonized. So these two elements are fused together, but he understands where China too is coming from and what China can do for Malaysia. So again, just trying to do a slight course correction. This is nowhere close to being a reset, I would say. Just a course correction so that the ties go on more stably.
He also talked about China perhaps bringing in more business, helping with the unemployment issue in Malaysia, of course, talking about palm oil going over there. Did he get what he wanted when he left, do you think?
It will take time to see how the relationship plays out from the economic front. These investments take some certain amount of time to mature, to gestate. The issue has been that there have been too many, with regard to China, sometimes too many investments announced, and then those investments don't necessarily all come through. So I mean, less is actually better, but let's have follow through on that. And particularly in the framework of Malaysia-China relations remaining strategically stable. Let me point out, I mean, just today the Defense Department put out its annual report of the PRC military, and in that it's written, I mean, Chinese nuclear attack submarines go to make port calls in Malaysia. This is how tight the relationship is. And those aspects of the relationship will continue. So again, just to kind of reworking the relationship slightly.
Joint statement from both sides talking about globalization, a commitment to that, a commitment to the WTO, and also talking about unilateralism. Obviously a pointed reference to the United States. And really we're seeing a cauldron here this week. They've got the hearings going on about potential new tariffs, the delegation coming from China. Give me your sense about where that relationship is and this kind of a statement basically telling Trump, hey, we're very much in favor of this. We're having meetings. We're going forward.
That's actually a very important element in China-Malaysia ties, China-ASEAN ties, because these countries are very interdependent and tied up in processing trade, and much of the final product which gets assembled sometimes in China goes to the West. So many of the Southeast Asian countries, they've not been as outspoken as they could have been, but they have been very nervous with regard to Mr. Trump's actions on the tariff front. And as we are seeing now also, some of the effects of those actions are also playing out on the currency front. And it is typically these smaller, internationalized economies like South Korea, like Malaysia, which feel the brunt of this, both in their trade account as well as in the value of their currency. So I'm not at all surprised. And Southeast Asian leaders are anxious and they want free trade, multilateralism, and WTO processes to be entrenched and to progress on that front.
Sourabh Gupta, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming in.